Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Harold Weist. And we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Trek for the Cross. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But people, listen, Trek for the Cross is the main anchor for today's interview. But I'm going to need you to do me a favor, and after you pick up that one, you got to go back for the sequel. And that one is called Jade Cross, Book 2, Before the Adventure. Head on over to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and get your hands on both copies. And also keep in mind that this is a trilogy, so there's a third one on the horizon as well. And I will say, Harold was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best publishers in the business, Pen2paper Press, Ltd. So if you or anyone you know have a book that they'd like moved, people, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give. Contact Pen2paper and have their wonderful team move it for you. You can find out more information on that fantastic team that I just mentioned through their website, Pen2paperpress.com. And remember, when you search for it, the 2 is the number 2, okay? It's the numerical one. So that's pen, the number 2, paperpress.com. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Harold here on the line. So let's bring him here with us so we can learn a little bit more about it. Harold, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we're very much looking forward to this. Listen, I know that an adventure novel like this is something that needs to be on everybody's shelf. If at the very least, just to have a journey to get lost in, to take us away from a lot of the pressures that we're dealing with right now in life. I'm telling you, this is something right up my alley, something I'm going to thoroughly enjoy, and something I know my listening audience will as well. Before we go into the book, though, Harold, let's start off by learning a little bit more about your background. So please, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm a retired Marine. I retired in 1973. I served a full tour in Vietnam, and I had 2 short assignments over there. And I really enjoyed the people. The people were really nice, but they were caught more or less between 2 gods, the Free World Forces and the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong. And I could see the way they lived in the countryside, and I could see how they lived in the build-up areas and in the cities. And it was really an amazing experience beside the war. Now, I started putting things together, writing little 2- and 3-page reports on things that I did or things that I had learned or some kind of education that I had. And I ended up doing a little thing on an experience I had in Vietnam. Well, I started tweaking on that and so on and so forth. So the first thing you know, I've got a prologue in which a Marine patrol finds a buried jade cross, and they rebury it. And that sets the theme for the whole trilogy. So now I've got almost a full novel there, but the thing is I've got to find out, well, where did this cross come from? So I got tweaking things a little bit, and I started on book 1. And I started with a little bit of history for a page or 2 because a lot of people that served in Vietnam never really knew anything about the history or the people or anything because our government never informed them. So I give them a little bit of history, and but anyway, the Vietnamese language was in Chinese characters, and we have the French and Portuguese priests and all that stuff trying to teach languages and things of that nature. And so we ended up with a French Jesuit priest, Alexander de Rhodes. He worked on translating the Vietnamese language into a more Romanesque type a language that could be written and followed. And after him, there's been a lot of deals with the Spanish and Portuguese and things of that nature. And in 1535, there was an Antonio de Feria, a Portuguese Catholic missionary, and they found a site for a nice harbor at a place called Faifo, a ancient Japanese trade city, which is today Hoi An City, and that is where the trilogy ends in Book 3 in Hoi An City. Now they wanted to make this a major port, but it never worked out. Now this is where I separate from history and I go into the story. I have him developing a secret society, and when he leaves, he turns it over to another man called Weng Hai, and supposedly they were going to be taking care of the peasants and so on and so forth. They end up being almost like a terrorist organization, but then they settle back down to champion the people and work toward uniting parts of Vietnam. And that's where the Jade Cross comes in. One of the Vietnamese heroes in the 1200s, and this is a name to remember, General Tran Hom Dao. This, in Book 3, there's the main antagonist thinks he's a reincarnation of this general. But this general is pretty famous, and there are celebrations in North Vietnam, different places every year. But what he did was, you could probably call him the father of guerrilla warfare, because he introduced this in defeating the Mongols twice. Plus, he wrote a book on booby traps, traps and snares and so on and so forth. And that book was actually used against our forces in Vietnam. Anyway, to go on from there, the leader of this society wants to obtain an icon, and this icon will help them unite parts of Vietnam. So he chooses one of his old warriors. It's kind of in semi-retirement, to go to China and recover a jeweled cross from a Chinese artisan. But along the way, he runs into a problem because something has been compromised. So he's got a different route, and he's given a young female guide. She's probably between 16 and 17 years of age, and they instantly do not like each other. But anyway, the route has changed, and it takes him up into North Vietnam, where they meet some bandits on the road that they kind of kick their rears, and they get into this a sub-hamlet, and they meet the artisan. They get the Jade Cross, and an enemy who's actually a member of the society kills the artisan, and he has a confrontation with the main protagonist, Trung Van Ba, and Ba kills him. Then he and his gorgeous female that they've now decided they're going to marry and have children, they take off, and they cut off in a different direction from an area where there was an ambush laid for them. Well, they meet another member of the society on the way, and they struggle through the so say the landscapes, hiding in amongst trees at night, so on, things of that nature. And they run into some of these bad guys, and they do them in, and they have a real interesting interrogation session with them, more psychological, more than physical. And they go on, and they eventually run into the big bunch of bad dudes that really wants to do them in. They have a big knife fight. Van Ba is injured, and at the same time they're rescuing a young man that had been brought along by these criminals who assist them, and he goes to the sub-hamlet and gets his caribou, and they eventually end up in a nice hamlet, and people celebrate the victory because these bad guys had gone through there and had raped and stolen and committed other crimes and things on the people. And since they had the protagonists had actually took care of these people, they had a big celebration for them and everything. And then they finally get the Jade Cross to Wing High along the way, and then in the epilogue, the two protagonists, Wing Van Ba or Trung Van Ba and Trung Timote, they marry, and he's made a mandarin, and he's the big wheel around this big hamlet area, and they're given a nice house and with rice paddies and so on and so forth. They have people working for them, and it's kind of interesting down to the point where they age and they finally pass away together, laying beside a rice paddy, still holding hands. And that was something that was kind of hard, because you get to love characters in your books, and you hate to see them go. But anyway, it's really interesting because going through the mountains, it's cold, and they have to have extra clothes they wear, and they have to protect their faces from winds. At night, they have to sleep up close together for warmth, and this is where the connection between the two eventually begins. And as I said, going up and down these mountains, this trip takes several days, and they pass places. It's beautiful. They can see the farmers working in their fields far off. They might pass some lady that's been finding some kind of vegetable or something that doesn't grow in their area. She'll, bring it back to their place, and things of this nature. And the connection keeps growing between them, and like I say, until they decide that they're going to marry and have children. It gets to be really interesting to me, the way everything works out, and it goes to show the people in those days, in those little sub-hamlets and things, they're really defenseless. When criminals come in and do what they want, they don't know how to respond to them. The people are not prepared to fight, and so that's why they look on this group as being heroes for getting rid of these criminals for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's basically the book in a nutshell.
There you have
and
it.
I say there are some references in different places that will pop up in book number 3.
Fantastic. Harold, listen, man, that's one pretty big nutshell, okay? I love it, man. I'm here for it. People, you know what you got to do. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Trek for the Cross is the title you have to pick up. Jade Cross, Book 2, Before the Adventure, is the sequel. And as he stated, there's the trilogy, so the third one is on the horizon. Harold, as we start to close out of this wonderful interview, I want to talk about inspiration for a second, because I know your background is in the military. And I understand that through your time in the military and through your time specifically with the Vietnam War, that is really what led to, in part, what led to you embarking upon this creative journey. But that's just an influence. Harold, where does creative writing fit into all of this?
As I say, I was just, at nights I would not be doing anything. The wife already was gone to bed, and I'd just be banging around on the computer. And like I say, I'd do 2 and 3 little page reports on things that I had been interested in or things I had done. And I had made about a 2-3 page report on this one incident I had when I was in Vietnam. And I kept tweaking it. And first thing you know, it started growing and growing. And I really got into doing this, creating characters and incidents and so on and so forth. Now, right now, I have another book that's at the publishers. The process just began. It's called Tolbane Retires. He's the main protagonist in Book 2 and Book 3, and it covers his military career and some of the things he was involved in, secret missions and this, that, and the other. And then I grew into something else. I created a detective and his dog, an overgrown lab that slobbers, and his name is Sherlock, and the dog's name is Watson. And they have, they have an adventure. Their client is a 12-year-old girl that wants him to solve her father's murder. And her father was murdered on the same mound on the same day as what his father had a few years before and what his father had a few years before. So he's looking at 3 murders, and it's very interesting. There's so many things involved. And then I have a 6th book from those characters, and they're working against some old mafia people. But one of the things I like the book about those 2 books is I incorporated 4 retired women Marines that work with a detective agency. And they kick butt and take names when it's appropriate, and it's really interesting. There's some fun parts, and there's some serious parts, and there's killings and adventures, and you name it. So I've really enjoyed that, and basically because being retired and being a widower, it's kind of a lonely type situation. Yeah. And I can find myself so involved in writing these books that it takes a lot of the pressure off of being alone, and it gives me something to look forward to at nights, tapping away and try to rack my brain. In fact, sometimes I even dream about things that I incorporate into the stories. So this is really interesting. I don't know, after this 6th book, I don't know if there'll be any more or not. Depends on how I feel. But being lost in there and developing characters and things just takes its load off of being isolated.
Absolutely. Listen, Harold, we hope that there is a 7th, an 8th, a 9th. Man, we hope you just continue to go because these books are incredible. People, you know where you got to go.
I'd love that. I may not live that long. I'll be 88 next month, and I have 2 cancers.
Oh,
and
so
I have
sorry.
some bad, some vertebrae that was damaged by cancer. So I'm doing very well. Stuff doesn't bother me, and I don't pay any attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm treated at the VA for everything, and they take good care of me, as they do most veterans. And I'm perfectly happy the way I'm living.
There you have it. Well, listen, Harold, we wish you nothing but the best in of course, a speedy recovery. And listen, people, I'm going to say it for you again, but I know half of you are already there, okay? I know you've been sold. This is an absolute page turner. I'm at the edge of my seat, and I know you are as well.
As I received copies of these books, and I read them, it's a completely different adventure for me, as opposed to seeing what's on the screen and worrying about editing and this and that and the other. And just to sit down and read through those books is kind of exciting for me, especially being my first project.
Yeah, absolutely. People, once again, we're here on the line with Harold Weist. We finished discussing his amazing book, Trek for the Cross, followed by his sequel, Jade Cross, Book 2, Before the Adventure. And as he stated, there are so many other books as well for you to head on over and just get lost in. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are the places you need to start by looking. Head on over there, pick up all of the fantastic journeys that he has created today, and you can thank me later. Harold, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Oh, and don't forget, Book 3 is the Jade Cross.